Are you having trouble making your painting look the way that you want? Is it not coming out exactly how you thought it would in your mind or in your reference photo? I'm going to go over the biggest tips that you need to do at the beginning of your painting so that way you have a perfect, complete product. Coming up in this video right now. Hey guys, Wild for Games here, coming from you at my Creative Control playlist, where I try to bring you the best tips, tricks, and tutorials to unlock your creative potential. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. A lot of us, when we first start painting, we run into a lot of roadblocks, and that's only because we haven't been shown the proper way of how to do things. Let me go over some simple tips and tricks that are going to change your mind and your perception of how you approach and attack your painting. That's going to make everything a lot easier. Preparation is key. When you're starting off in the Bob Ross style, you want to make sure for your wet on wet technique that you have the proper painting surface and you have the correct amount of magic or liquid white applied to the actual material. To make sure you have a proper canvas or painting surface, usually most people starting out use the cheaper materials, which is completely fine. I pick up most of my canvases at Michael's and I buy them in the value pack. But the problem with those sometimes is they don't have the correct amount of gesso coating on them. So what you want to do is actually apply another coat of gesso on top of that. This will close up a lot of the porous holes that are soaking in that magic white, which prevents you from blending and spreading your colors. The next thing you want to make sure you have is the exact amount of magic white you need. And this will come in time and experience, but the best way to describe it is having the correct film, not coating, on the canvas. And the way we make sure that we do this is we make sure we spread all the magic white completely on top of our painting surface. And the best way to check to make sure we have an even film coating is take each one of your fingers and divide it in fours and touch each section in the top left, top right, and bottom left, and make sure your fingers almost look like you're putting them down for fingerprints for the police. If you can see just the outline of your fingerprints, you know you're golden, and that's all you need. And now you know that your colors are going to blend properly and they're going to be wet and slick for the whole entire painting surface area. When starting out in the wet and wet technique, one of the biggest problems everybody has when they first start out is they feel like they need to paint everything with thick amounts of paint, and that's simply not true. When you paint in the wet on wet style, your oil paints will actually travel really far due to that undercoating. Always start out with very little paint and see how far you can spread it. You can always add more, but it's very, very difficult to take anything away. You'll have to scrape it off or maybe even start completely over. So make sure you build up with the intensities and the saturation of your colors. You would be surprised at how far oil paint will travel across the whole canvas. When you start to paint skies, one of the big things you need to think about is where the horizon line should be. You need to decide this before you actually start putting in your sky. Beginner painters start with the sky color and then pull everything down and don't think about where the horizon line should be. It has two major factors. One, it's going to add a natural gradient that's going to add depth into your painting by creating this natural diffusion as it gets to the midpoint of your land to create that natural depth effect. Number two is you're going to have a lot less paint on the canvas that'll allow you more easily to apply other layers on top of it. If you already have a thick sky painted background, it's going to be really hard to put a mountain on top of that. And even more, it's going to be hard to put trees and hills and bushes and water and everything that progresses after that on top of that sky, because everything is going to be diluted and then become muddy. So make sure you work on figuring out where your horizon line should lay and where it should end, so that way you can concentrate on creating that natural gradient. If you've just started out in painting, you've probably realized one of the hardest things that shouldn't be hard is clouds. They're free formed and they should look like they have a little bit of air in them. However, when you probably do them, you get a little bit of nothing but a blob in the sky. So the trick is constantly keep your paintbrush moving and make sure to add ups and downs and breaks and lefts then rights. Constantly keep your hand moving and keep that paintbrush moving in a finite whisking circle. Don't care about the inside, only concentrate on the outside line of a cloud. When you properly have an outside firm edge of a cloud, all you need to do is basically fade in the inside. And to do this, you very lightly want to fade with a 2-inch brush. You can sit here and blend as long as you want. The problem is most people blend and push too hard. You literally are barely touching the canvas. Let the paintbrush do the work. Sit there and just watch the bristles take it away. Take your time when you're creating a cloud, because once you understand how to do one, it's very easy how to do the next. And to create some movement in it, all you gotta do is very lightly just give it a lift. People try to do it in 1 or 2. Try to give a lift out of like 4, 5, 10 strokes. You can constantly keep lifting little by little. The next tip is one of the most important tips that you're actually gonna get, and that's do one thing at a time. A lot of the times we get caught up on seeing all these other painters who have a lot more experience than us really crank through a painting, and it's really hard to do that. So concentrate on doing one thing at a time. So do one cloud, then do the next cloud. And this goes for mountains, this goes for bushes, this goes for trees. Just concentrate on doing one thing at a time, so that way you pay all of your attention into that one part, so that way you know you're doing it properly. A lot of artists that start out easily get confused when they try to do too much too early. It's okay to do one small part at a time and build up. It's perfectly fine to do that. One of my personal favorite things to actually paint is a mountain, but it seems to give a lot of beginning painters a lot of trouble out there. The biggest trick to doing a mountain is when you use a knife or a paintbrush, put bumps in there. Actually jiggle your hand. This will give natural crevices, peaks, and valleys into a mountain, and it'll give it more characteristic, more depth, and more shape. So constantly keep that hand jiggling, moving, do whatever you got to do to keep it moving. When doing mountains, you have to remember that you need to scrape off and take out all the loose paint that's on the inside of the mountain. This will allow us to have a nice natural gradient and to allow us to apply thick highlights and shadows onto the mountain to give it some 3D shape to it. So make sure you always use a dry, clean brush, and don't be afraid to tap it out on a towel or paper towel to work out the excess. Just make sure you pull down what you need to create your natural fade of your mountain. If you're not sure how to do highlights, the best trick that I was ever shown is etch out what side you want the highlights and shadows on. Actually take your palette knife and use the spaded end and literally carve in on all of the mountain peaks of how you want the snow to flow on the highlight side and the shadow side. This simple little trick will make it so much more easy when you have to put highlights and shadows on a mountain. You'll actually get to see where things have to go, and you won't be second guessing yourself of where you have to put your whites and where you have to put your shadow side. So make sure you do this if you're starting out as a painter. The only thing left to do is to diffuse the bottom of the mountain. Make sure you use all of the 2-inch brush and follow the angles of the mountain. Start out with the highlight side, tap in thoroughly all the way down, and then move over to the shadow side. Give it a nice lift up, and this will create a nice illusion of mist or diffusion, whatever you're trying to create within your painting, and it's gonna look beautiful. I hope you guys enjoyed some of these simple tips and tricks. These are just to get you started so that way you feel more comfortable as you approach your Bob Ross wet on wet style paintings. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment below. If there's something you want me to show you how to do, feel free to comment. Also, feel free to follow me on my social media. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. You can also watch me paint on Twitch. And if you want to buy something from me and help support, there are links below, or you can go to my Flare Dash store to buy any of my art. I will see you guys all in the next video next time. Take care. Peace.